So welcome everybody to our webinar, the Asia Pacific Travel Health webinar, Introduction to Travel Medicine. It's with great pleasure that I welcome you all here this evening, and we've got a great selection of speakers going to present tonight. So I'll just bring in my presentation. Great. So the agenda for tonight, I start off. My name is Dr. Jenny Visser, and I'm the president of the Asia Pacific Travel Health Society. I'm going to spend a little bit of time, a very brief travel medicine overview, setting up a setting up a travel clinic and the pre-travel consultation. Then I'll hand over to my colleague, Lavina Pikasi from Indonesia. She'll talk a little bit about some key travel medicine resources. Then Associate Professor Mike Starr from Australia will talk about vaccine preventable diseases, and Professor Karen Leader will talk about food and waterborne illnesses and travel. And then finally, Associate Professor Divya Dihoda from India, will be joining us to talk about vector-borne diseases. In the end, we'll have some time for questions, so please, I encourage you all to pop your questions into the Q&A box in the bottom of your screens, and then we'll deal with those as we at the end, all together at the end. So please don't be afraid to pop some questions in there. So travel medicine and overview, why travel medicine? Why do we even have this thing called travel medicine? And basically it's because people do travel, and we know there are risk gradients between people's home destinations and where they plan to go, and we know travelers get sick. So the whole point of us as travel medicine clinicians is to try and predict some of those risks and assess those risks and give our travelers some advice so that they can lessen the risks of becoming ill when they travel. But I do need to recognize that this is an international, a regional and international audience, and what each of us as individual clinicians do as travel medicine may be quite different to what somebody else does as travel medicine. Certainly for myself as a primary healthcare physician in New Zealand, the vast majority of travel medicine I do is preparing travelers for travel. So that's before travel. I'm very aware that some of my colleagues, and hopefully some have joined from Indonesia, Bali, for example, or from Kathmandu in Nepal, a lot of their travel medicine will be looking after ill and injured travelers during their travel, although they will also do some pre and post-travel advice as well. And then some people will spend a lot more of their time dealing with ill travelers after they return home, for example, infectious diseases physicians based in secondary and tertiary hospitals. So travel health is a continuum. It's before, during and after, and we need to think about where we are each going to fit within that continuum. I'm sure many of you have seen this figure many times. This was produced about 10 years ago by the UN World Tourism Organization, looking at actual trends, then predicting trends as what would happen with international tourism over the next 20 years. They got it absolutely right up until 2020, of course, and then the pandemic hit and all the predictions were blown out of the water. But what you can see in this is that traditionally Europe, the blue, is where most people have traveled. But beginning probably around the 1990s, we can see that the rest of the world took a much bigger slice of the pie, and especially the Asia Pacific region, our region. About 25% now of all tourism is into our region. And also as it expanded into tourism expanded into different countries, many more of these countries were low and middle income countries and tropical and subtropical countries. With that came an increased risk in travel-related health risks. So we saw 2020 worst year in tourism, 1 billion fewer arrivals. And in this graph illustrates this beautifully. We can see there've been little wiggles and drops and in the past, like with the global economic crisis, but it rallied and came back very quickly. But we can see here that in 2020 we had this dramatic drop. The travel international travel contracted by about 75% globally. A little bit of an upflick in 2021. And then looking at what's happening in 2022, and if looking for statistics here, really there's not a lot beyond January, but this was published just a month or so ago. And a couple of things really stand out to me that are relevant to our region of the world, is that the Asia Pacific region had the largest contraction. We lost 84% of, well, travel was down by 84%. And then it actually got worse in 2021 compared to 2020. And in January 2022, there's just been a slight improvement. Europe and the Americas is very different. They never contracted as much, and they're bouncing back faster. The Asia Pacific region will bounce back, but perhaps it's going to take a little bit longer. So in 2019, about 51% of all travellers were still destined for Europe, but about 25% into the Asia Pacific region. And that was about a 4% increase on the previous year. When we're going to be looking after travellers and advising travellers, it's really important that we think of purpose of travel. And 55% of people in 2019 reported that that they were travelling for leisure, recreation, holidays, but this big group, 28%, including VFR travellers. So those are people who are travelling for the purposes of visiting friends and relatives. And really important that we tease that out in the pre-travel consultation, because we know that as a group, those VFR travellers are overrepresented in a number of poor health outcomes related to travel. So we do know that travellers get sick. This is quite an old study now, but it brought together quite a few earlier studies. And between 20 to 70% of all international travellers suffered some illness while travel, and that depended on very much what group was being studied and where they were going. About 5% needed to seek medical care, and about 1% were hospitalised. So these are quite significant numbers. And as I said, our role as travel health clinicians, travel medicine clinicians, is to try and reduce some of those risks with good pre and during travel care. So if you're thinking about setting up a travel medicine clinic, and I prefer to really call it providing a travel medicine service, there are some key things you need to think about. And the reason I like the term providing a travel medicine service rather than running a clinic is that there are many, many different models of providing a travel medicine service. There may well be a standalone travel medicine clinic. You may choose to provide travel medicine services within an existing clinic, for example, within a primary healthcare clinic, or it could be a hospital outpatients clinic. Travel medicine clinics based in pharmacies, community pharmacies, is quite common in parts of Europe, but not very common in our area. And certainly travel health advice can be given within a hospital-based clinic. And if the institution's big enough, like military or a corporation, you may even opt for an in-house travel medicine service. But I wouldn't get too hung up on where the travel medicine is delivered. What I think is more important is the who. And this is a lovely wee study that was conducted a few years ago now. And they asked a number of people who held themselves out as being travel medicine providers. And what they found that was irrespective of where they worked, it was those practitioners who held some travel medicine qualifications that were far more likely to deliver better travel medicine services and have a higher general travel medicine knowledge score. And I think that's really important. If you're thinking about setting up a clinic or getting into travel medicine, you do need to do a bit of extra training. It could all be self-teaching. It could be going to conferences and seminars or attending webinars like this. But thinking about having some formal qualifications is also very important. So if you're setting up a service, you need to think about what services you're going to provide. You need to think about how you're going to provide them. Are you going to have a standalone clinic? If you're going to have clinics provide travel medicine services within a bigger clinic? Are you going to have dedicated travel medicine days or afternoons, or are you going to pepper pot those consultations throughout? And you need to think about the qualifications and training of your staff, and both for your clinical and non-clinical staff. The idea of a one-stop shop, so going beyond providing consultations, vaccinations and prescriptions, because I think we would all agree the bare minimum of providing a travel medicine service would be to provide consultations, prescriptions and vaccines. But perhaps if you have the resources or there's the demand, you may choose to dispense your malaria chemoprophylactics on site. You may decide to dispense your medical kits, including all medication, first aid items on site. You might want to include the sale of insect repellent, sunscreens, hand sanitizers, or even then moving into travel accessories, including water disinfection devices and tablets and the like. And in the clinic I worked in before the COVID pandemic, we did this. We had a one-stop shop. People could have everything done at the clinic. Travellers liked it because they left fully prepared, but more importantly, it made the clinic economically viable. A lot of the profit we were making off the travel accessories, the repellents and things, helped us keep our consultation and vaccination costs down. You need to think about who your clients are, because that is going to determine your services. So are you only going to be seeing short-term travellers, typical tourist travellers, VFR travellers, business travellers? Are you going to see more long-term expatriate travellers, especially can you link into government organisations, non-governmental organisations, aid agencies, corporate clients, because they're a very good group to be seeing, and it diversifies your travel medicine service. What do you need? Who do you need? You need doctors and nurses with some qualifications and interests in travel medicine. If you're going to dispense on site, you need a pharmacist, you need someone to manage the practice, and you need some receptionists. Our in-house pharmacist allowed us to dispense vaccinations, medical kits on site, which was fantastic, and including all our anti-malarials. I know Mike will go more into vaccines, but I think if you're thinking about providing a travel medicine service, give some thought. You're not providing a comprehensive service unless you are authorized to provide administer yellow fever vaccine. Remember, there is a different, only accredited health professionals and clinics can administer yellow fever vaccine, and every country will have a slightly different process, even though it's all dictated by the international health regulations, but a slightly different process as to how you become accredited. So find out what that process is. You need some resources on site, and Lavina will talk more about that. Think about some qualifications. The International Society of Travel Medicine offers the certificate in travel health, and they have now moved the exam online, and also the review course which supports study for the exam and general knowledge around travel medicine has also moved online, which has made it a lot more accessible, and it's broadened out to an international audience, which is fantastic. So think about signing up for that. There are some universities within our region who offer postgraduate qualifications in travel medicine, and I will admit a conflict of interest here because I convene the University of Otago qualifications. James Cook University in Australia offers excellent qualifications, and Mahidol University in Thailand, and I'm sure there are others I have missed as well, but there's plenty of opportunities. Sign up. I know you're all members of our society, which is fantastic. Support your national societies of travel medicine, and consider joining the international society as well, because there are fantastic conferences and things you can access through that. Very briefly, the pre-travel consultation. And if we think of this young person here, I've put in this scenario. So a 25-year-old who's planning to travel for 5 weeks in India, then 5 weeks in Tanzania, just thinking about what are some of the travel health related the travel related health issues that you're going to have to cover in a pre-travel consultation. Remembering the pre-travel consultation is all about assessing risk. It's about identifying hazards, what hazards is this traveller going to be exposed to, what's the level of exposure, and is there something about this person that might make them more susceptible to this hazard or have a worse outcome if they were exposed. And when I look at those three things, that allows me to develop an individualized risk assessment, which then determines what my risk management advice is going to be for that person, whether it be vaccinations or chemoprophylaxis or advice about behavior. If you're approaching your pre-travel consultation, there's a whole lot of information you need. And I always break this up into two different areas. I find that useful. And first of all, I think about what information do I need to know about the traveller? And then what information do I need to know about the trip? And about the traveller, I want to know their travel experience because I think that feeds into the consultation. And then it's all their medical history, and including ongoing medical conditions, allergies, vaccination history and the like. And I needed detailed information about their trip. When do they leave really matters because that's going to impact on the consultation as well. I need a very detailed itinerary of exactly where people are going and what they're planning to do, who they're traveling with, and the purpose of their trip. So it's good to have a little framework thinking about what information you need. Then you need to think about what are the topics that you want to cover within the pre-travel consultation. Now, this is quite frightening when you see all of these like this and all these topics, and not every consultation, not every traveller will need all of these. You need to pick and choose. You can't possibly cover all this in a single consultation, but I've just put it in there because just to make you realise the breadth, the potential breadth of the pre-travel consultation. So in conclusion, some of the key aspects is that the pre-travel consultation needs to be an individualized risk assessment. You need to look at the person in front of you. It needs to be comprehensive. It's about a whole lot more than just the vaccines, because there is this misconception, I think, amongst many travellers that it is all just about getting a few vaccines, although that's very, very important. It's only a small part of the pre-travel preparation. It takes a lot of time. You really need to put 30 minutes minimum aside, use the interdisciplinary team, use both nurses, doctors, pharmacists if you have them on site to prepare your traveller, and make sure you have your key resources to hand out as well. So on